We cannot easily escape thoughts. They are like our eyes. Whether our physical eyes are open or closed, the eyes of thought are always open. The mind is always open. They come not to trouble us, but as an aid to our conscious life. They are powerful. We dilute the power of thoughts by making them a place of storage, holding our past memories and impressions and concepts. By dropping the past, we open up a vast energy field that will flood this moment, and along with it, fears and worry of the future may also disappear. Thoughts are useful only here and now. As the past or the future, they become burdensome relics. Now, how do we unlock this power of thought? As a house is built brick by brick, we construct the mind one thought at a time. Each thought has tremendous power, which lies locked within the thought. This power remains hidden just beneath the contents on the surface, the very superficial layers of the thought that we interact with. Just as the earth we're standing on long preceded our arrival here, the energy locked within each and every thought has always been in existence, while the contents which we add are a recent addition. This energy of thoughts will outlive any of the contents they carry. Deconstructing the mind, in theory, should uncover this hidden potential, this hidden energy well within each and every thought form. But along with releasing thoughts from the captivity of the past, memories and concepts, we probably also need to find a way to crack their shell and expose the seeds that lie within these thoughts. The power of a giant tree is compressed in every one of its seeds. Just in the same manner, the power of the entire mind is compressed within each and every thought form. Part of our understanding of our inner true self involves unlocking this power of thought. Every thought is like a knife, which has a blunt end and a sharp end. We can easily hold a knife by its blunt end. In the same way, the tremendous energy which runs through the grooves carved through our habitual and conditioned type of living, those energies are narrow, through those narrow and shallow channels are blunted, and we find some of these habitual thoughts quite harmless, and we are in fact careless with them. But every moment we waste on our habits, conditioning, changes the course of our lives ever so slightly, moment by moment. These last moments then accumulate over a period of time, each one a potential door, which then becomes the foundation of our misery. The creative end of thoughts are like the sharp ends of knives. Once we cut something, it's hard to put them back together as it was earlier. We must be careful on how we use this creative aspect of our thought. They cut both ways, good and bad. When we continually ask ourselves if what we're doing for the world is for or against living existence, then we are not in the passive hands of nature. We are an active force. Through the power of thought, we are changing our collective destiny. All scientific advances have come about through this power. The creative energy of the sun works directly. The creative energy of the sun works indirectly on us, but the creative force of thought works directly, provided we know how to harness this power. We hold numerous habitual thoughts in our conscious waking states, and none of these have much power to cause a significant inner transformation within us. Instead, they might make us dull and our lives unconscious. Such thoughts serve little or no purpose. Awareness and alertness on our part may reveal a vast sea of thought that is filled with our past. Frozen in time, this energy field saps our mental strength instead of enhancing and revealing the mind's true capabilities. Hidden amongst habitual thought forms whose energy patterns are low are thoughts with very high potential. These are like precious diamonds. It is up to us to find and polish such forms. They can cut a new path through which flow the power of our inner and outer transformation. Such thought forms are pure, not by virtue of their contents, but through escaping the lens of identification we place on thoughts. Unlocking the power in each thought requires patience, persistence, keen observation, concentration, and non-attachment. Also, a one-pointed focus is of tremendous help. Along with this, our dormant witnessing ability must be put to use. The witnessing ability is a key element. Just as heat is required to cook food, witnessing is essential for bringing together different virtues such as patience and non-attachment. Just as heat makes water evaporate, witnessing the mind and thoughts makes the ego, which is embedded in each thought, slowly evaporate. The ego embeds itself in the contents of every single thought. This microscopic bit of ego imprisons thoughts and thereby their energy. Under its watchful eyes, thought forms dance to the tunes of habits that the ego finds pleasing. These may be to our detriment, but the ego just doesn't care. Once the element of ego leaves any thought form, that energy is essentially free. The mind is like a mountain of thoughts. Transforming this huge mountain of thoughts, one thought at a time, is virtually impossible. Just as it's not feasible to move a mountain by removing handfuls of earth from the base and placing it in another location. It's easy for us to nibble on a few thoughts on the surface of the mind and think that we have opened the gates to inner transformation. Just like there's salt in the surface and the depths of the ocean waters, the ego also lies buried deep within the mind. Every thought in the subconscious is tagged and may be recalled to the surface at a later time. These days, we can easily cross mountain ranges. We've built roads to traverse on them, bored tunnels to get through them, and our planes easily fly across them. These external conveniences have all come about through collective effort and the power of thought. Crossing the inner mountain of the mind full of thoughts and transcending its limitations requires an individual approach and individual effort. When it comes to the mind, no one can create a way for another. The moment we began to identify with our thoughts early in life, the mind started to gain control over our lives. Each moment we spend doing that, which is identifying with the mind, we get more entangled with the mind. Witnessing the mind, on the other hand, reverses this process gradually over time. Any identity implies the presence of the ego. Every thought that we call as mine becomes part of the ego. Witnessing does not involve saying these thoughts are mine and those are not mine. That's a subtle form of rejection when we say these are not my thoughts. And through such rejection, we again become identified and become attached to those thoughts that we reject. The power of thought may be regained by holding on to some of these principles. I'll leave you with 7. Number 1, leave the past alone. That which has moved into the past is done and gone. It is buried deep within us, and we may see it return as we go through the process of cleansing the mind. If we remain alert and aware as this happens, we will not strengthen those thoughts and push them back into the mind. Secondly, refrain from identifying with thoughts. When we stop identifying with thoughts, it must be a hard stop. We cannot relax this rule for any reason or any thought. Identifying stems from labeling thoughts as good or bad. It is tempting to hold on to some thoughts which we may consider as good and beneficial for us. But trust in the power of the energy stream that sustains the mind. It can bring about great change. Perhaps new thoughts, more significant thoughts, can come about at any instant if we leave the doors open. Number 3, don't direct mental traffic. Once we stop directing traffic in the mind will begin to rearrange itself in accordance with its natural laws. Just as we cannot go against nature without suffering repercussions in some form or another, we cannot go against the law of the mind. This law of the mind is not designed to punish or reward us, as do our secular laws, but when we take our place as a witness to the happenings of the mind, we begin to respect its natural ways. Number 4, understanding the workings of the mind will go a long way in unleashing the power of thought. The mind doesn't hide its methods from us. Its workings are simple and out in the open. Like night and day, it has a visible, conscious part and an invisible, unconscious component. We cycle through these conscious and unconscious components day in and day out in our waking and sleeping states. The body is in tune with the natural day-night rhythm, and it functions accordingly. For instance, in general, we work when it's daylight and sleep when it's nighttime. Our waking state is closely aligned with the conscious mind, and sleep is more in tune with the unconscious component of the mind. Thoughts move back and forth by not burdening the conscious mind through incessant recall and reliving the past through memories and concepts that we've held close to our hearts. We also rest the unconscious mind. Less we interfere with the natural rhythm of the mind, the more we grow in understanding of the mind. Number 5, don't be afraid to empty the mind. As we identify less and less with thoughts, the mind begins to thin out. It appears as though thoughts are starting to leave and the inner mental space will soon be completely blank. At that point, fear may set in that we end up losing our cherished memories and joys of the past. Well, it's our choice. Do we want to become like a stagnant pond full of the past, or a flowing river that stays in the present? A river doesn't store its waters in order to maintain its rate of flow downstream. As it flows and empties into the sea, millions and millions of gallons a second, immediately fills up with more fresh water that comes from upstream. In the same fashion, more we use our thoughts for mindful action carried out in full awareness for the greater good, there will be a tremendous flow of energy that courses through the mind. Number 6, don't force the mind into stillness. The mind is not static. It is a dynamic entity. We are not its dictator, and we should be. The mind must be respected as we respect any other individual's freedom. A friendly mind is a powerful mind. It disarms all our negative qualities, such as anger, envy, greed, jealousy, and lust. When we can be friends with our mind, we can become friends with almost anybody. Our enemies lurk within us. They grow in strength and numbers when we try to keep the mind locked in one place. Those who we call enemies on the outside pale in comparison to our own inner enemies. Let the inner game play out in the mind while we watch from a distance as a detached witness that is watching the mind. And lastly, value the mind. The mind is a form of energy, a valuable resource. We devalue the mind through negative thinking and projections. These thoughts, negative thoughts, drain the inner abundance of peace and happiness. A mind in a perfectly steady state is an oasis of peace and bliss. It is we who add the flavor of negativity to the mind. It is like slowly poisoning ourselves. Once we understand the value of the mind, we will be judicious in how we use the mind. And its use will be only for the good. These 7 steps, that is, leaving the past alone, not identifying with thoughts, not directing mental traffic, understanding the mind and its workings, being ready to empty the mind without fear, not forcing the mind into stillness, and valuing the mind will go a long way in harnessing a powerful element in our lives. We hold this element in our hands, our mind, our thoughts. Let them flow.